All set.
All right, then I'll call to order the meeting of the Diversity, Equity, and Anti-Racism Subcommittee. And I think we'll start with the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay. Do you need a minute to look them over?
You guys can't hear me.
I just have a quick question about process, and that is that I was absent from the last meeting. I believe that I recently heard that we can approve the minutes even if we were absent rather than abstain, but I don't know if that's the practice of this subcommittee, so I will defer to anybody who wants to speak to that.
I mean, in the subcommittees that I've been on, it seems like if you've read through them, if you feel comfortable approving, then go ahead and approve. And if you would rather abstain, then that's fine too.
Right.
I don't know if anyone else has a more firm opinion, but it seems like people just kind of use their judgment.
Got it.
Okay, if
Can you
I
hear me?
think that's enough time for people, or a little bit more. Okay.
You can't.
Her volume is really low.
Really, really low. I think it's gathering from a mic far away. Hold on.
I don't think she was going to say anything to the motion.
No.
Okay, then I'll start the roll call. Member Kirschenbaum
Yes.
and Member Ayala
Hell yes.
and Member Bennett,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes as well. So those are approved. And then the next item is to continue our policy review. Brendan, would you be willing to share your screen with the document?
Sure. Sharing is caring. So hold on one second. Let me get that. Yeah, so we're going to do screen 2. And just let me know about the zooming, as always, because it's hard to tell. I'm on a huge screen here. A little small or readable? A little more? Okay.
Yeah, if you could make it a little bit bigger. Just because it doesn't take up the whole screen. You've got the mass behind it.
I know, because I'm going to be clicking between, so I'll try.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. And we'll see what that one looks like. But just to reorient us where we were, this is our working draft document that we've been using. We have gone through all of this, and it looks good down to this point. Actually, a little further. This highlighted area is where we left off. These 2 paragraphs. And then if we continue to follow the MASC harassment policy, it goes into a very long section on sexual harassment next. And that would be what would come next. There's a little bit of a mystery here where I do not recall where this particular paragraph came from. I don't know if we need to worry about that at the moment, but if anybody does remember where we pulled that from, I just lost sight of that. But this is where we were leaving off and where we're going to start for tonight, because I know it is a priority to get this done soon.
So I think that paragraph is from our existing.
Okay.
I think so.
I think you're right. Yeah. That makes sense, because it definitely was not the MASC wording. And I believe, looking to see if this was covered in what we have written so far in the new draft policy, if we need to borrow any language. Okay. So I could actually do a split screen, and or you could pull it up too, and we could kind of A/B it, but it's a little tricky to do this virtually. But go ahead.
Maybe we can put the the existing policy in the chat,
Okay.
a link to it. Would that work? And then if that's comfortable for everybody to view it that way.
Sure. That's good. Yeah, and then number of that policy again, sorry.
6437. I think I've got it.
Yeah, I got it right. Yep, I've got it. I'll just drop that into the chat.
Yeah, so that highlighted paragraph that you're referring to, Brendan, is actually what I see as the third paragraph on the existing policy.
Yep.
Essentially word for word. And I'm wondering, is the bulleted points above that, was that was the intent of that bulleted part to replace that paragraph narrative as just a list? Is that where we were heading?
Yeah.
That seems like
Yes.
the way I'm reading it from here.
Yes, and that bulleted list came from MASC.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
okay.
So we're basically just making sure that we're not losing anything by, if we were to strike this whole paragraph, for example, we want to make sure it's all covered, the policy.
So in terms of that first list, it seems like everything is covered. And then up until the or at school related activities. And I believe that is covered earlier in the MASC. In our draft already, right? At school related activities, I recall going into a lot of detail about what that counts. What counts as that.
Yep, so I'm just looking back here with the keyword.
I see that
And then we've got
the second paragraph of our new draft.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yes, the second sentence, right? Yep.
And then from our existing, it looks like the relating to an individual's actual or perceived race, color, national origin, etc. That part of the paragraph looks like that's what, paragraph 4 of the draft we're working on.
Right here.
And so if we just double check that we're not losing anything from the existing list to this list.
Mm-hmm. Don't think we are. Anybody notice anything?
So, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Laura.
In the highlighted paragraph, I'm reading through the second sentence from the bottom, where it says, for purposes of this policy, harassment shall also mean conduct that, if persists, will likely create such a hostile, humiliating, intimidating, or offensive educational environment. Up above in the, not to rehash too much, but up above where it says student-to-student harassment, yep, oh, you just went a little too far. It's just above the horizontal line there.
Yep.
It says, I think the intent of those two sentences is the same, but I think the way that one words, where it says conduct written, verbal, physical, is designed to embarrass, intimidate, distress, agitate, disturb, or trouble students. I would I wonder if designed is the right word, because students it implies that a student might have premeditated an event, and maybe so, but I'm not sure that that's what we're looking for, is necessarily a premeditated, designed action. We're trying to avoid action, designed or impulse, or as an impulse, right? Designed or otherwise. So I'm just I would just like to highlight that word right now. I'm not sure I have a suggestion.
I might have a suggestion. I think you make a really good point, Laura, because unfortunately kids may commit, for lack of a better term, microaggressions without intending to be hurtful, in addition to doing things that are actually intended to be hurtful. So I'm wondering if we could say conduct of a written, verbal, or physical nature that has the effect of embarrassing, intimidating, distressing, agitating, blah, blah, blah. Does that make sense? Would that work?
Yeah, I mean, we could actually just turn the words embarrass, intimidate, change the form of those words, and get rid of the verb right there, right? That embarrasses, intimidates, distresses, agitates, right? And just remove that, right?
Yep, I think that makes sense.
It's also in the employee to student.
Okay, yeah, I would, yep.
Okay, so this would come out. Okay. Should I put this in? Intimidate?
Yeah, I think that's good.
I think so. I think the intent doesn't necessarily matter if it was premeditated, right? We're concerned about the outcome or the perception.
Yeah, intent might be related to how you would address it,
right?
But lack of intent might be a mitigating factor, or it might affect how you would address it. But yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay. Need those changes.
And I like that above the bulleted paragraph, it seems that we are keeping in a single incident may, depending on its severity, create a hostile environment. That came from that paragraph, and I think that that's worthwhile keeping. So I'm glad to see that that's sort of going to be an enduring statement in this policy.
Yeah, we have that right here as well.
Yeah, and that would omit the last paragraph in that highlighted, the last sentence in that highlighted paragraph.
Okay. I'm just going to delete it so we can pare this down.
Yeah, I think the paragraph that is now at the end of that, excuse me, I'm sorry. The sentence that is at the bottom of that paragraph now is also up above the horizontal line. So I think that it's there, but just everybody else confirm that the verbiage is complete there.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out which one. I'll go to the one we're editing.
Conduct has the purpose. That one there, it seems like it's not verbatim, but it's extremely similar.
I think what it's only missing is the offensive. I think that's the word that is missing in the above section, right? Because I think that the goal was to have this paragraph highlighted here because we wanted to double check and see if it could be deleted, right?
Yeah.
So I think that in the rose-colored highlight, where it says creating a hostile, humiliating, intimidating, or offensive educational or work environment, I believe that that is in what Laura was referencing up above.
Yeah.
And I think the only missing part in what's above is the word offensive and humiliating. I think otherwise. So what does the group think about the inclusion or exclusion of those? Of humiliate and offensive in learning environment.
I think they should be added in.
And into this part, is that right? Add it to this list.
I was looking at the bullet points.
Okay.
So the third bullet point under the employee to student and the single bullet point under student to student.
Yeah.
Am I reading that correctly? I might be toggling.
No, I think you are. I think you are. And I think that both of those statements, including humiliating and offensive, like I see humiliating as being like the victim's, like that could be a victim perspective, right? It's humiliating to me as the victim. It's it's offensive to me as the victim. But I also see the word offensive being, that the broader community can also find the interaction offensive. And so it's not just the intended person, but it can be the climate that is created. I think that both of those need to be included.
Do we think I'm wondering if it's a better fit up here, though. I just want to make that, offends, humiliates, embarrasses, intimidates.
Okay, that's a good idea.
What do you think? And in both, down the bottom as well, and student to student. What do you think?
Seeing a lot of heads shaking.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that it fits in there. I mean, and offends, but yep.
Yep. Okay.
I think that we need to add, I'm sorry, up above where we're talking about teacher, employee to student.
Mm-hmm.
Employee to student. No, okay, I was gonna say that we need to add not just the learning environment, but the work environment. But I think that where it's talking about employee to student, it's the learning environment that's impacted. The student, it's the learning environment that's impacted. If it were student to employee or employee to employee, then that would be the work environment, right?
Right, and there's another policy in a different category that addresses that.
Yeah.
Under personnel management.
Yeah. So I feel like that paragraph, that highlighted paragraph, is covered now completely by all the other bulleted points. And I think it's going to read better to be in bulleted point versus narrative.
Does that sound good to everyone if we get rid of this? Because it's already addressed elsewhere. Okay. All right. And then we're to another highlighted paragraph here. I believe this came from our old one as well. Let me just see. This could have been MASC.
I think this one is MASC.
Can you hear me?
It's
barely, Krista.
Barely.
Barely.
Can you go up just a little bit? I have a quick question about, because you highlighted a few words in there, and I just wanted you to speak to that a little.
Yeah, we were going around about the word submission, and we're going to, when this goes through a legal review, that's a word we want them to look at, whether that's the appropriate word, because we think it's such an odd word to include that it must come from a law somewhere. That's the only way to make
it. It's very weird.
Yes.
It's weird, and it feels weird to read. So, okay.
Yeah.
All right, I see.
Yeah, so we have that little note here.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Okay. And Linda, I think you're right too, Linda Woodland, that this does come from MASC, this last paragraph here. Yeah. And
Yes.
it does.
In the in ours, we have a paragraph after the definition of harassment that we just deleted and included above. A paragraph on student and staff responsibilities about complying with this policy, and then is the section on reporting harassment, discrimination, or hate crimes. And so that's where it goes into the students can report any case of harassment, discrimination, or hate crimes to any adult in the school, who is then responsible to inform the building principal or designee. The school principal or designee is responsible for receiving reports and complaints of violations at the school level, and at the district level, the district equity coordinator is responsible for receiving and addressing reports of or complaints of violations of this policy. And then it goes on. Two more. And in ours, I don't know, Brendan, if you can speak to what is the updated titles. I think our existing policy has a lot of other titles that I don't know if they're used anymore.
Yeah, and actually this highlighted paragraph, I think, is worded well as far as our situation. So Title IX coordinator, that's me, or building-based employees. So these investigations can actually be conducted, and in most cases should be conducted by an administrator in a building. There are times where it wouldn't be done by a building-based administrator, it would be done by me. Yeah, so I think this is the Title IX is definitely accurate for us, and I actually do like the way this is worded in this highlighted one, because you're right, in our old policy it's pretty outdated and we don't use those designations anymore, those titles.
I think that the one aspect in our existing policy is a sentence that reads, in situations where a student or other person is uncomfortable reporting the incident to a designated official, he or she may report it to a trusted school employee who must promptly inform a designated official. I don't know if that goes into procedure more than policy, but I know we've talked quite a lot about how wanting to have students have a trusted adult in their building, and if that's not, I guess I would ask, is this worthy of bringing into this section to highlight the options that students have, but probably word it differently so we can avoid the gendered pronouns as other discussions with this group?
Linda, I agree with you in explicitly stating this, even though it does sort of get into procedure. I think having a statement in the policy that yes, in fact, teachers, guidance counselors, a para, whoever is in the school in an official capacity can be can be that trusted adult and then pass that forward. I think that's an important and explicit statement to make, because it backs up the procedure that would and should happen. And I think that we've heard some anecdotes through the people who have written to us that, who are they going to go to, because no one's going to bring it forward. No one's going to do anything about it. And I think that statement is really powerful, because it says we are obligated, staff members, whoever is that trusted adult is obligated to bring that forward. Almost like a mandated reporting kind of a thing.
Yeah. And pronoun wise, we choose they. What are the recommendation on there? Rather than he,
I actually wonder if we should wordsmith the sentence more, and this issue might disappear in
Sure.
that process. I don't have a suggestion yet, but I will. And anybody, please jump in.
So we're looking here. Yep.
You could say, oh my gosh, this microphone, can you hear me at all?
A little.
Yell? Okay, so you could, the first part, comma, and then that student may, and then it really is, in my opinion, like, you guys might want to change things around in there, but I think that it's a fine sentence. Instead of they, you can just say that student may report.
Do we need the phrase about, I'm sorry, Krista, I don't know if you're continuing.
So, I think that I definitely think that it's important that there be somebody within the school to, for that person to talk to. I just don't know if it's always going to be a school employee. I don't know. Does this, it may not, but does this limit the people that can advocate for that student?
So I think that explicitly stating that it's a school employee is important. I think that I'm trying to carefully choose my words here. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what makes it a school-related activity. That's what makes it a that's what puts it under the purview of the school.
Well, yeah, and I see that, but what happens if they don't have a trusted person in the school, or a teacher, or, even, like, I don't know, just anybody? What if they don't feel comfortable? Can they have another advocate bring that forward for them?
Well, then we're getting outside of
Even if,
the
well, if the
school.
incident happened in the school, is what I'm saying.
Then I think then that counts in the earlier statement, the yellow part, a portion where investigate allegations of harassment. It doesn't say who is bringing the allegation, right? And could that cover? Does that preclude anyone? Does that cover any kind of allegations? I guess I'm thinking if a friend, if a family member is the one bringing it to the school's attention, then that still would need to be investigated, correct?
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem to matter who is doing the reporting. It's just that the incident must be connected to the school in these specific ways.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
yeah. In the second paragraph, we get at that, the parameters of what's within the school's purview and not. Yeah, so it's open as far as who can submit a report.
So
Okay.
I was interpreting that statement, and I can see now, Krista, where you came from that angle. That was not the angle that I was thinking of.
Right.
My take on it was, in the event that someone in the school finds out about a situation, it is not for that person to decide whether the allegation is valid or not valid. They should bring it forward and let the designated official conduct the proper investigation.
Okay. So then in that case, maybe some wordsmithing would be appropriate here, because it doesn't necessarily read that way. And
Okay,
I think it
right.
could be better. Yeah.
I think that's it. Personally, I would, that's the point that I want to make, is that it's not up for the teacher to figure out whether it's a valid allegation, or
Right.
the para or the cafeteria worker. If in fact there's a report or an incident, it should go through the proper channel. It should initiate the process.
Got it.
So then could it be something like, if a student reports an incident to a trusted school employee, that employee must promptly inform a designated official?
Or an incident is witnessed.
Yes.
So reported or witnessed, it has to be brought to officials. Am I getting at it, or am I just making things complicated? Okay, so the district will promptly and reasonably investigate allegations of harassment that have been reported or witnessed. So that could be what where that could be added if you wanted to put that right in that paragraph.
And what would be added and where?
What did I say?
Allegations or
Of
witness?
harassment.
Reported or when allegations of harassment reported or witnessed.
Okay.
See, I think putting it in that sentence, I personally, I think that sentence can sit the way it is.
Okay.
I mean, that's just my opinion. I think that it can sit well. I think that other statement is the focus, where we have to explicitly say any incident, any situation reported or witnessed, using your language, must be anyone who receives or witnesses an allegation of harassment shall, right? Use the word shall, promptly inform a designated official.
Sounds good.
Anyone in the school, right? Any school employee who witnesses
Or receives report of.
or receives report of an allegation of harassment shall promptly inform a designated official. And I think that needs to be trained. That should go into our professional training for our staff, and that must become common practice in all of our schools. And it may be, but this explicitly, for me, that explicitly states it.
I think the one additional job that that original sentence was doing was pointing that out, that a student can go to any school employee. It doesn't have to be the magic right one who has that job of,
Any,
Yeah.
but any school employee shall promptly inform it, right? So I think that including the student pathway is important to maintain in whatever wordsmithing. So like anything, a student may shall make a report, can make a report of harassment to any trusted school employee.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good, so like a
As a
third
second
statement, right? Like a third statement there?
or just like the beginning part of that sentence. So a student
A
So,
student may report it.
may, yeah,
The student may.
report to,
An incident of harassment. I think that's what we had been using up above.
Yeah. And what was the rest of this? To
any trusted school employee. And then we've got the student's pathway, and then we have the school employee's pathway. And then I think that sentence, that green sentence is taken care of.
I agree.
so this would be out. And
I think.
So I would like to propose that we reorder these to start with the student pathway, go to the employee pathway, and then the district responsibility. So that yellow paragraph would be at the bottom.
okay, let me just move it there, and then we'll have it in one plot. Okay. So the green's coming out.
I believe so. Is that right?
I think so.
It's blue now, but okay. Then I'll go. All right. Okay, so now we're into this one, yellow.
So I would like to add one more statement, and that is actually in our existing policy, 6437, and it says, so this is on the second page of that policy. It's the third paragraph. The second, the last sentence in that paragraph, a report or complaint involving, oh, no, that's not what I wanted to put. I'm sorry. Oh. So that one says, I'm sorry, that one says a report or complaint involving the superintendent should be filed with the school committee. That's now, yes, that may be true. And maybe that needs to be in there. I'm not sure, but that was not my intent of my comment. My intent of my comment was saying that an annual report should be an annual summary report of instances and outcomes in general should be provided to the school committee annually as part of the annual report.
Okay, and is that in our current one or no?
No, actually, I thought it was, but it isn't. Okay. I have it here as a note that I think that we should receive an annual summary report of instances and outcomes. That's my opinion.
I agree with you. If we're taking an initiative to prevent and help with any bully situation, the only way for us to know that any initiative that we're taking is working is to have a report of that progress or non-progress, hopefully progress.
So in terms of, no, go ahead, Laura. So my comment there, I recall this group talking about that as like a wish list item for this policy to include. My question would be to make sure of privacy concerns because of information coming to the school committee becoming public record. So I don't know if that needs to be noted or if that's just automatic, but that we would want to make sure that it's not violating privacy.
I would, yeah, I would assume that it wouldn't have names on it, and it wouldn't have details. It would be more broad.
It is something. So I was thinking, Linda, the same line. Because they are so infrequent, and that's a good thing that we don't have. It's if it becomes public, even with washing of names, it's it can be revealing. We're a big community, but not that big, and unfortunately, even though we try to protect these investigations, sometimes through the community, word gets out. So it can get a little tricky with that. So we might want to get a legal opinion on, a precedent with that. And obviously we want to, share that kind of information when it's appropriate, but there's so few of them that it could be traced back in some cases.
So as I kind of, I just would put the question because I am concerned about the privacy. I'm glad to hear that they have been so infrequent. But considering how we heard from our students from last summer, I would have to question if the infrequency is simply in reporting versus in occurrence. And so perhaps what we're looking for aren't the circumstances that I agree, it can be very unintentionally revealing, but a number, a quantified number of reports in any year. If that might be, I don't know if that's something we would want to set as a policy or if that's somehow otherwise achieved, that we begin with a number of what happens district-wide. And after that, see if there's possibility to drill down, but just so that we can begin to see year to year what is happening a little bit clearer. I don't know if that sounds reasonable.
I think something like that is in line with, in a good way, with the state reporting we need to do around bullying, and that is washed of anything identifiable, not by school. So, anyways, I think that would be a good start, and I get completely, Laura, the your rationale behind that. We need to be able to monitor that and also have a discussion about if things aren't going well.
Is there a way that we could also invite the students to let us know as well? Like they let us know in January, or not January, I'm sorry, in June. I know that was for specific reasons, but is there a way that the students can be surveyed so that their voices can be compared to the numbers that we're getting?
I think, Krista, where we get at that a bit is in the Panorama student surveys, which we're starting to roll out. So the SEL surveys that we have. So I think that is one of the data points that we do have, which gets at this. It's all about school culture and climate, belongingness, right? I believe there are questions actually about, they may not say harassment, but about conflict with peers and that type of thing. So it's related. It's in the same realm.
Okay, so I think that that's going to be an important number to look at the difference, to find if people are actually feeling comfortable enough to report the incidences that they feel that they're going through or that they've witnessed, or, you know,
Right.
I think it's going to be important to compare those numbers. So I don't know where we ask for those, if we have to write that into something, if that's what we're questioning right now. But I think that those two numbers are something that we should have.
Yeah, and I think the nature of a harassment policy is that it's required, of course, but it's when things have gone really wrong, right? So it's not preventative. This is reactionary, the way it's written. So this is not the only place this work exists. You know, I think the SEL measure that I mentioned to you is more on the preventative. How are things going? Like, we're skill building at the beginning, so that we don't have a school district where there's harassment is kind of rampant and, you know, either adult to kid or kid to kid.
Okay, so then those aren't the numbers that we would be looking for.
I don't know if it would sit here. I don't think that's what I'm getting at. I guess that I don't think that would be written into a harassment policy, and MESC doesn't have that, but it is something we need to keep in the conversation. I just don't know if it exists in this policy.
Okay.
Is my thought. That's just my thought too.
So based on this conversation, I hear that this is probably not the best place to have that statement, and I'm okay with that not being written policy, but I would definitely want an annual review as part of our practice, to know that our supports, our trainings, our PDs, our student skill building sessions, that those are effective. We need to have numbers, and I'm not confident right now that the numbers that we have are the true baseline, because we don't have a true mechanism for students, which is, you know, I don't want to have another powder keg where we have, 2 and 3 hours of student testimonials from years of built up frustrations that I had these experiences and I had no place to go. And that's not, that's not what we want. That's not what I want to have happen. I want to be proactive, and I want us to be able to have real conversations and difficult conversations around what we're doing and how we are responding to the needs of our students. And I know I'm not alone. I'm preaching the choir here. So,
Absolutely.
Amen. There we go.
Completely agree.
I wonder if a policy, if it would sit well within this policy to have that annual review with the superintendent, or leave it as a possibility that a review of outcomes, maybe, I don't know, just or like I was saying before, just a quantifiable number of reports, and then we would be able to see year to year how much is escalating or de-escalating, rather than looking for that baseline. And then that might be a good opportunity to start those comparisons against the Panorama, if the Panorama is intervening.
Mm-hmm.
Or, the Panorama is exposing what interventions are happening, and if they are intervening before this drastic measures have to be taken. I don't know.
Yeah.
I do think that keeping records is important. I mean, in research, we say what gets measured gets done.
Yeah.
And so I think keeping some sort of centralized record would be an important thing to do. So that makes sense to me.
I think further down in the MASC, there is a section on record keeping.
Yeah.
However, the problem that I ran into with the MASC policy was that it seemed to completely move over into sexual harassment versus broadly harassment. And so, yes, the record keeping requirements, it seems to specify sexual harassment complaints.
Oh, huh. Yeah, and we need to make it more
that's
general.
not right. And I assume that comes from a legal requirement, whereas I would assume that there would be a legal requirement for other types of harassment as well for record keeping. But I don't know from this sample policy. And the districts that have used this that I compared against used it basically word for word. So I haven't come across other districts that have found a way through this part of it. But I didn't do much of a search. So hopefully there's something better out there.
And I wonder, like, going back to Linda Long-Balil and Laura, your comments, and Krista, I wonder if maybe there's a statement in here about the district will, continue to look at non-academic data indicators around school culture and climate, or something that points in the direction of, like, we're going to look at data that is not just grades and attendance.
Well, shouldn't we be keeping the data though? I mean, not just looking at, I don't know, whatever might exist, but keeping the data, gathering the data, collecting. That's the word I'm looking for, collecting. Yeah. I mean, I know that we're under-resourced, and so there's a part of me that hesitates a little bit, but I mean, there has to be a way to, I mean, couldn't you just set up an online interface? Could Barry, is that the tech guy's name?
So we do have, we do have that around Panorama, like that's, but I wonder, I just don't know if that sits in this policy. You know, I'm saying we should reference SEL data because I think it's important and I don't want that to go away. And it's relevant also to this. I'm just trying to make sure, you know, with Laura's original statement, that there is some mention about that in here, but I think it does take us in a different direction on the policy. So,
see, I think a statement that, you know, data will be collected is part of a policy. How you do it, what mechanism you use is procedure.
Sure.
So I didn't actually know what you were talking about when you said Panorama. So.
Yeah, that's related. It's our social emotional learning surveys that we do with kids, and we also have what's called a student success portal, which it allows us to look at student data and progress as well. So, sorry, I assumed. Yeah.
So would that data include, let's say, a kid? Would that data include the fact that the child had violated this policy at all, or no? It's
no, because like I was saying to Krista, it's more about the early warning type. You know, if there's, if it looks at engagement in school, belongingness, peer relationships, and the quality of those. Right. But all of, you know, when those things go wrong, harassment occurs. So it's more on the preventative end. Okay, good. I guess I would argue that we do need some sort of system to keep track of, you know, not necessarily the name of the kids. I mean, but the fact that an incident occurred. I mean, I would have the data anonymized, and just collect, you know, the fact that an incident occurred, the nature of the incident in terms of what category of discrimination it was. Yes. Oh, here we go. Yeah, something like this. Right. Yes, something like this. But for all of these different infractions. Yeah. Yes, and that's all laid out here, and this would at least be a starting point for us.
Yeah,
and that comes after. I mean, there's still quite a bit of this policy. Just to kind of preview. I mean, I don't want to get people seasick. We got the sexual harassment section, and then these procedural things I think will be a little more straightforward about notice, due process. Those are, you know, there's not much wiggle room on those. So So it seems like are we tempted to go to more of the procedural now? I mean, we could go out of order, or do you want to go more linear here? I see Laura shaking her head. So probably just continue sequentially here through this policy.
I'm okay with that, but I do think we need to have some sort of reporting.
Can I ask the group a question? So it sounds to me like we're talking about record keeping for the district as record keeping, but then there's also that reporting aspect. So we have some requirements for what we need to keep, the records we need to keep as a district. Then really the question just comes back to who needs to be seeing any version of that. Do we want to make note of that here of the school committee may request, I don't know, or just that the district will maintain the records? The district must review the annual, the records annually or something like that.
I just have one comment to record keeping. I kind of am a little fearful of having it posted too much because kids might think that their information is going to get, out there. If it's said that we're keeping all these records on everything, it might get scary to these kids that are trying to report. If they hear, hearsay, whatever it is, don't say anything because, they keep a record of all that. It can get scary for kids, I think, thinking there's too much data, too many records kept on it. It has to be clear that it's confidential and it wouldn't get out there.
Right. I mean, so with the sexual harassment complaint here, the record keeping requirements, do we keep the kids' names? I mean, I'm fine with just keeping numbers. I think that would be acceptable. Although I suppose if you have repeat offenders, you need to pay attention to that in one way or another.
Yeah, and that's kept. Yeah, that file is definitely kept by the district. In the district administrative office. Yeah.
Is that a legal requirement, Brendan? Because should anything go to court, you need to have file records.
Right. Yeah. Right. That's really true.
Right.
Yeah, and that's part of all of this, right? But it's also, yes, we can look back. Exactly.
We have a statement. I was scanning to see if anything existed. It seems like perhaps on the last page of the existing policy, under oversight, we have something that might work. How does this sit with you? Where is it?
I added yeah.
The district, yeah, that's it right there. So where it says the equity coordinator will, under the supervision of the superintendent of schools, ensure the successful administration of and compliance with this policy. How would you ensure that you're doing that? Well, you would have to keep data and you would have to make data-driven decisions, right? That's implied that you would be making data-driven decisions by successfully administrating this policy. You'd have to be able to evaluate whether or not it's being successful. And then we, as a school committee in our practice, could ask for you to report out on the successful administration of such policy and provide us with some, data points. But that wouldn't need to be written into the policy.
Yeah. Yeah, so this might get at what you were looking for, Laura, and it's from our existing one, like you said. And this is pretty old. 2011. It's hard because the positions do change, and this is essentially I am doing all the roles of people personnel. under my current title. So
Yeah. And I think that we could probably remove like the whole his or her mailing address, telephone number, but we could have in there a posted mechanism for reporting. And I think we currently do have a posted mechanism for reporting on our district website, correct?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Are you named as the equity coordinator on the website? I haven't looked at the website recently.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. And on DESE as well. In the DESE school profile. Yeah.
So are you saying, Laura, let me make sure I understand that this is sort of a broader or a less specific way of saying that records will be kept? Or have we moved on to a different topic maybe?
No, that's what I'm saying, Linda. I'm saying that this statement would, in order to ensure a successful administration, you must have some sort of data evaluation process as part of the practice.
Right.
So by just making that broad statement in the policy, I feel that then it could be called out, for lack of a better phrase, by the school committee to say, hey, can you please report on the successful administration of such policy?
Right.
Provide us with some information, and then they could give us the bullying data and incident, numbers and dates of when they've administered the Panorama survey and so on and so forth, right?
Yep.
Yes, I think that might be adequate. Be interested to hear what other folks think about that.
Yeah, for sure. I'll be quiet now.
Well, I think that is good. I think it's good to have as many open-ended possibilities, right? We don't want to tie our hands where right now on, April 13th, 2021, the number of harassment complaints is really important to us. But, when we review this in another couple of years, right, as we're supposed to, right, the, the focus might need to change for the district moving forward. So I think that having that open-ended of the superintendent is ensuring this through the equity coordinator, and then we can ask for how the district wants to report that back to us, and it's more of a relationship than a do this, do that, and more. I like that idea that it's more of a collaboration.
And to what you said,
Anyone else's?
went along too about what we value, we measure. So
what gets measured gets done.
Yeah. Yep. And that section that Laura just brought to us from the old policy is called oversight in the way it's written. So it sounds like we're going to keep this, or
yeah, I think it'll do. Okay. It'll do. Someday, if we decide it's not adequate, we can change it then. But it's, I think, an improvement. So
I do think this first sentence should be more simple. That the superintendent will designate a district equity coordinator. Right? That can change, and we have to do it annually too. So.
Do we even have a pupil supervisor of pupil personnel?
You're looking at.
That's what I thought. But you have but isn't your title actually something different?
Yes. Don't get me started. Yes.
Just call him Jack.
That's what I thought.
Needs, yeah. Director Jack.
Utility player. So, but I think if we put the district or the superintendent will designate a district.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Will. Okay.
Shouldn't it be shall?
Ah, yes. Your favorite word, Laura.
We hear that a lot in policy, so I think that it's.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to be consistent. Yeah.
I shall put that in. Yes. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Where does the title oversight come from again? Did you say, Brendan?
Well, from our current policy is how
It's just a little confusing saying oversight and then it goes into that. It's just.
Yeah, that's how it was. We don't have to put that though.
Yeah,
It could just
I
be
don't
more
know.
in the narrative. It doesn't need to be there. Should I pull that out?
I would, if anybody else has anything to
Yeah.
say.
Like the old format. Okay. All right.
I wonder from the previous yellow section about the superintendent will recommend, etc. If it would work, because who is designating the district equity coordinator? It's the superintendent, right?
Yeah, it is.
So could we just switch it over to the superintendent shall designate, excuse me, a district equity coordinator who will ensure, and then continue on from there. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Now, is that
Is that another shall?
no,
Go on, Laura.
I think that one actually as well. But that is the Title IX coordinator is a synonym to the district equity coordinator.
It
Are they
cut out.
one and the same?
Yeah, one word cut out, but yeah, are they the same? We should have that be consistent. Yeah.
So to make sure that we cover our bases, because I think Title IX coordinator is by law.
Yeah.
And so we could say also known / district equity coordinator, right? So we could use those two words, sort of Title IX / district equity coordinator.
Like this.
And then put that up in the previous paragraph too.
Yeah. Okay. And I'll just have it be the same.
Yeah.
Here too. Yep.
Can we again, looking at those pronouns, can we alter that to the Title IX / district equity coordinators information, including name, mailing address, telephone number, and email address, will be posted prominently in the district office as well as all school buildings within the district. So start the sentence with, what did I say? Sorry. Hopefully you caught it better than I did.
I didn't.
Okay.
Instead of saying his, her, you would just remove that.
Yeah, I think I changed something else too.
It was the Title IX coordinators information, including mailing address, telephone number, email address.
Look at you paying
Thank
attention.
you, Catherine. You are on top of everything.
I wrote it down, so that helped me.
Contact.
Including. And then this list.
Correct.
And then probably the rest of it.
Correct.
Okay. Is that right?
So to me, well, actually, Brendan, I'd like to know, is it something that you would foresee ever being two different positions, splitting? It would be all one and the same typically? Or do we not need to go into those kinds of weeds for this?
I think there's really going to be no major changes to central office that I foresee. So it would be a combined, interchangeable title. So I think it's fine the way it is.
Are people set with how this section reads? Should we move on to the next?
I think it looks good. Before we move on, since we are in a bit of a hurry with our, trying to get some things done by the next school committee meeting, I did want to raise, and I know we only have about 20 minutes left. I wanted to raise the policy on disability quickly. I mean, my bottom line is that I think that it does make sense to adopt the MASC policy on disability, because it explains because of the issue of reasonable accommodation and that sort of thing. I think the policy on disability is more complicated than the policy on some other protected classes. And I think that the MASC policy explains it quite nicely, very succinctly, very nicely, and would give people a better understanding than just sort of a general reference to disability. Could we just look at it real quick, and if everyone agrees, just decide to adopt it, what would be the best opportunity to do that, or to consider it?
Well, so from my point of view, and I think it might be useful to just do a quick check-in on what is left on this policy to make sure we have a good sense of the scope. But after that, I don't have a problem if there aren't any other objections. So I think that we do have it within our, I think we have it in our agenda as something to discuss. So if we can just do a quick skim of what other sections are here, and then I don't have a problem as long.
Okay.
What is
all right.
what is the correct phrase without objection? I would be willing to move on.
Great.
Okay, great.
So my only objection is that we have other bulleted policies on our list that are before the one on disability. And I would very much like to take those in order if we are able to address more policies than this one today.
Well, do we have a hard stop for tonight, or I wasn't aware that we had. I mean, I know it would be good to keep our time to a manageable amount, but
I know. Go ahead. I can go till 9, and I know I did request specifically at our last meeting that we cover this policy at this meeting. But I had to look back at the agenda. I don't recall exactly what we had on the agenda. I did request that this be put on the agenda.
Yeah, so what we have on the agenda for continued policy review is this policy, gender neutrality and existing policies, which I think is actually a larger thing to bite off because we have to go through those individually.
Yeah.
Based on what we found out. And then gender identity policy had actually been requested for the previous meeting, but we hadn't gotten to it. And then we have the non-discrimination on the basis of disability policy review. So I think if this works, I'd like to go in that order as well, just because it has been requested from the last meeting and it got skipped already.
Okay. All right.
But I hope I have positive feelings that we can get to both tonight. I would really like to.
Okay, great. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So should I go back to where we left off here? And hopefully you're still hopeful after seeing all the scrolling,
Yeah.
because there's a little bit.
So where we left off is we've covered everything until the sexual harassment section in the MASC, which we currently have a separate sexual harassment policy. And I think that actually could be should be a larger discussion on how we if we want to include it or not, or rather keep it separate or migrate it over into one policy. And frankly, I don't know. I would want to do a little more research before going through that. I don't know if others feel like they're set to make that call at this point. And then what else is left in the MASC after this section?
Yeah, so this is all still that section. Then there's notice of sexual harassment, due process protections, and I believe this applies to the whole policy, not just sexual harassment. Yep. And record keeping, which we just glanced at, and that is the end.
Okay.
And then legal rules.
And then in our current one, I think that we have a lot of procedure that we don't need. I think my take was that we would be looking to just kind of cut, because we have the bullying plan and intervention plan procedures outlined there. Right. Okay, so then if we can just make a note that we have the question of the sexual harassment policy to keep separate or to add in due process and record keeping. I think those were the last three items.
Yeah.
And then if there are no other objections, I'd like to move on to the let me scroll back up here to the gender identity policy. That I think we, I know I had to request access. Has everybody been able to review the Hopkinton policy JBD on gender identity support? I'm seeing head nods.
I'll pull it back up. I just wanted to switch screens.
Sure.
I'll zoom in here. All right, I believe I'm at the right one. Or this looks like the right one, right?
Yeah.
A little fuzzy when I zoom in, but I think people can read that.
Just to give you a little background information, if I may, that Hopkinton's JBD policy is nearly word for word the policy for Norwood Public Schools as well. There's a slight change in their wording, but it's the policy name and reference JBD is exactly the same.
So this is the policy right here.
So does anybody have a place where they'd like to begin? Any comments? Any discussion?
I have a few questions on this policy, but just like overall, so my first question is, how does one go about getting a support team within the district? I think that's a question for you, Director Keenan.
So are you off of this policy, Catherine, or is that where you're reading it?
Yeah, well, it just talks about like a support team, and I know that students have them, but I know other students who have struggled to have them. So I'm just wondering, like, in our district overall, do we have a process in place for students to go to get these supports?
I mean, this is not our policy, but
Yeah.
but asking about us, this piece where they're talking about the team, they include the administrator, counselors, school nurse, like that is traditionally what's considered a student support team, you know. But yeah, that's, I mean, what I'd be looking for in our district too.
Okay, so if we were to adopt this policy, this process would be implemented, but right now there's not something like that, similar to that.
Well, there is. We have, you know, school psychologists at the very least at every school, school counselors in middle and high school. So, I mean, that would be something this policy would help to shape too, would be formalizing that more.
Okay, so say a student like wants their name changed or like wants to use a specific bathroom, they just go to their like psychologist at the moment. That's what, or like counselor.
Yeah, and that's what we would discuss that here, you know. I mean, that's part of what this would be. But yeah, ideally it would be. But actually, it ends up being any trusted adult too. You know, it's not always an administrator or a counselor, but that's typically where they would end up for you know, kind of a private issue or one that they might want a little discretion. Yeah, would be a school counselor.
Thank you.
Sure.
Question, sorry if we've discussed this, maybe I missed it in the last meeting, but do we have a policy that's similar to this at all? We don't?
I don't think we do.
The closest that I saw was the non-discrimination on the basis of sex.
Right.
That was the closest, and that's different.
Yeah.
I just I think about the bathrooms in schools, and for somebody that doesn't want to use a male or female bathroom, I worry about them finding that trusted adult and having that space. I think that's really important to put in here, and for everybody in the school to know that that has to be provided.
There's some policies in other districts that do include a line or a statement about that. When I put this question out to the MASC listserv, we got, I think, 4 policies back, if I recall. Some were very similar to this, and then there were 2 that went into a lot more detail about every aspect of school. But there are a couple that had specific lines to address bathrooms. Others were very general like this and assumed it would fall under that umbrella.
I don't know how general we should be with it, or how much more detail we should have with that, because I worry about, we have so many different schools, so many different ways the schools work. I just, maybe it needs to be more detailed. You know, I'm saying that.
So I see the second paragraph as being a little bit more process than policy. And I'm without having a mechanism of practice in place, I'm not sure that we would want to have policy in the statement. So I think my hope would be to provide a policy that allows for growth of both the district in this issue, to acknowledge that there that this issue is out there, to acknowledge to our community that we are a welcoming and affirming district, and that that students who have who need a safe place can go to the school and know that they will be supported. How we do that, I think we need to grow into that space, and I'm not sure that I'm ready to put the language of that second paragraph into policy. But I think that making that statement, that first statement, the second paragraph, I think for me gives us sort of some direction on how we need to grow very basically with facilities. So that's where I'm at right now.
And just so you probably know what I did, but I just took the text and put it into a doc so we can chop it up as needed or do whatever makes sense. And that's all.
Laura,
You know, yeah, okay.
sorry. So I guess where in that second paragraph, would you mind saying where you're seeing the procedure versus policy? Is it because of it naming the team, or who might be in the team, or?
So supportive strategic plan, to me, I don't know if we can put that, that feels like practice. And then the team, right? Who is going to be the team? In some schools we don't have full-time counselors. So how can we have, how can we ensure that the policy would be met if we are asking for non-full-time counselors to be available at the team? I'm not sure that we are structured to be this specific in our district.
Mm-hmm.
So I see the team may include, and so that's where I don't see that as it requiring an administrator, a counselor, and a nurse, but it might be composed of. So I don't know if there's reason to include a different set of personnel, but I see it with a supportive strategic plan will be developed. I don't know. I'm going to continue to sit with that. My question was about the word adequate in the third paragraph.
Yeah.
And that's where I was worried. Right? Are we setting a floor? Sorry, Krista.
No, that's the paragraph that's actually, I agree with you. Adequate, what does that mean? And then also that first sentence there, student who identify as gender nonconforming are entitled to have access to restrooms. How about the restroom of their choice? Right. So so what that does by not letting that be or not having language around their choices there, it's giving a lot of leeway to, well, that's where we feel that you should be going, so we are providing that to you.
I just put something in the chat that came from another policy that I got that was way more detailed, but it may have some language around that.
Okay.
It talks about the restrooms, etc., corresponding to their gender identity of their gender identity. So it's up to the student's identity.
I like that better.
It came from Westford, which was actually like a 4-page document that talks about every aspect of school life, which may be more detailed than we need, but
consistent.
I like that particular language.
Perfect. Yeah.
So I'm going to read what's in the chat because I think that's required with open meeting law.
That's fine. I was just hoping to share it.
Yep. No, I appreciate it. That was very helpful. With respect to all restrooms, locker rooms, or changing facilities, students shall have access to facilities that correspond to their gender identity. Schools shall allow students to access the restroom, locker room, or changing facilities consistent with their gender identity.
My one concern is that they don't have like they restrooms in the school. Like we have family restrooms, but by saying like consistent with their gender identity, sorry, like do we lock them in a box of choosing between male and female? Like we do have the family restrooms and the nurses thing, but that's just my concern around that language there that corresponds with their gender identity because that.
I agree with you absolutely with that, which is the part, the second, sentence there. If they're uncomfortable using sex segregated restrooms, should be provided with a safe and adequate alternative. Is that the nurses?
Yeah.
Bathroom? What is that? Is there something like that in every school that we can say that is policy?
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think
That's what the policy I took that from also has a whole paragraph about that, but I didn't know if we needed that much detail. But it basically says that a safe alternative, and then it talks about, you could go into more detail or less, but.
Well, she does raise the practical issue of, are there restrooms available in the school, in each school, that will, as an alternative? Do all the nurses' offices have family restrooms, or, that's, I mean, it's just a very practical issue, for better or for worse. What do we know about that? Do we know?
So as far as I know, and I should know this off the top of my head, nurses' offices do have bathrooms.
Okay, great. All of them?
I believe
as far as
so.
you know? Okay,
I believe
good.
so, but you can sense my hesitation because there could be a school somewhere. But yeah, I believe they do.
Okay.
But I can verify that.
Yeah, they probably want to verify that, just to be on the safe side.
It makes it.
I think the ECC does not.
Going to gym. Are you going to go to the nurse's office first, and then you're going to be late, and then it's going to be kind of I don't know. So that gets into the whole like, that's wicked hard. But they have to have a place where they feel comfortable too. And I don't know if our schools, we just looked at the budget of putting more bathrooms in. So I don't know if we're going to be able to put in another bathroom for that. So it does have to be that, or one of those places, as opposed to where they are. So there probably would have to be several.
Just a quick question. What would it take to getting signs changed on bathrooms that say boy and girl, so you don't have to worry about any of that? I know that's a district thing, and I don't know, is that something down the line that can be looked at?
I'm thinking of just one particular school where we've discussed shortage of bathrooms, and that one. So like even having adequate binary gender. So yeah, I would need to do a little bit of homework on this because the facilities are not typically where my mind is, but in this case, it overlaps a lot. So
is that Dawson that you're thinking of?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a bathroom problem at Dawson.
Yeah.
So
I don't want to complicate things. I'll just put in the chat the rest of this paragraph that the other policy had, but I think it's more detail than we need, but maybe not. Maybe it will be enlightening. Just as another example, because the policy is 5 pages, so I don't think we need all of it. It had examples of.
I can read it out.
Yeah, that's fine.
This may include, for example, addition of a privacy partition or curtain, provision of use to use a nearby private restroom or office, or a separate changing schedule. However, requiring a transgender or gender non-conforming student to use a separate, non-integrated space threatens to publicly identify and marginalize the student as transgender and cannot be done.
Right.
I think if you don't mind me jumping in, I think that that paragraph does help illuminate the spirit of what I think we're trying to accomplish here. So I think that might clarify the adequate. I think that the question really is the how much agency does the student have in determining which facilities they'll be using, right? I think that's the issue that the policy doesn't show as the sample one is written, but perhaps this paragraph does create that. And then just looking at our time, I want to make sure that we give the third policy of the night ample time. So I just want to put that out there to the group.
So I have I like that comment that you just read about, like you said, it kind of answers the question of what would be adequate, what could be adequate, what is not adequate. There's in another policy that I'm reading, there is a statement that answers, in my mind, why we would have such a policy. And it's not mentioned here in this draft policy, but I think for the community, for our both our wider community, both our school community, I think at this particular moment, I think answering why are we having this policy initiated, I think is an important question to answer. And I just like to read out the statement that kind of resonates with me. And I'm not going to name the community, but it says the school community recognized that transgender and gender non-conforming students are at a higher risk for peer ostracism, victimization, bullying, truancy, violence, substance abuse, unaccompanied homelessness, and discipline treatment. And for me, that statement perhaps included at the top in the second sentence, like a second sentence in that top paragraph, for me is sort of an essential piece of our commitment to education and why we're putting in this policy.
Laura, if we want to add that, sorry, yeah, can you just reread it? Anything?
Yeah, so it would read the Wachusett school district, regional school district, recognizes that transgender and gender non-conforming students are at a higher risk for peer
non-conforming. Sorry, I lost my place. Students
are at a higher risk for peer ostracism, victimization,
spell that right,
bullying, truancy, violence, substance abuse, unaccompanied homelessness, and discipline treatment.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's it.
So now, Laura, were you proposing that the now third paragraph be struck for the time being or altered?
So I had originally said what I said to strike it, but I'm hearing after the discussion we've just had, I'm kind of removing that suggestion. based on feedback. So that's where I'm at right now.
I think that paragraph's important.
Yeah, I do too.
I can see, not to be, I don't know the word used, but I can see other students thinking that the transgender students or that they'll be having special treatment, getting a separate bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
I can see that being an issue, and I think they would need somebody to go to at any time. I definitely can see other students saying, hey, that's not fair. Why does so-and-so have this special bathroom? I want a special bathroom. I don't like sharing stalls with everybody. And that can, I can see that getting out of hand and a lot of animosity towards each other happening. Yeah.
Of course, if the bathroom's in the nurse's office, I don't know if that seems as enticing, but I see your point. You've got a good point.
Yeah. Special treatment. I mean,
right.
Singling out. It's yeah.
But I don't know how we can get around that exactly.
I'm not sure, because there might be say a diabetic student that has a pouch and says, I feel uncomfortable going to the bathrooms. People can see my pouch or whatever.
Yeah.
It just kind of snowballs, I think. That's the thing I'm seeing too. I think that's why I was saying the bathroom information being bigger, because I can just see some things coming up.
Right.
When I see these first three paragraphs as kind of working together to say we care about students who are transgender and we want to create a positive environment for them. I mean, I think that's an invitation also to parents as well. I mean, for the younger kids, this would be the parents would tune into this.
Can I make a very tiny wording change, grammatical change, where it says, the team may include administrators, school counselors, and school nurse, because it says may. I don't know if the and is appropriate, or if it should say and or if it should say school administrator, school counselor, school nurse, or other trusted adult, something like that. I'm just trying to.
The team
to me, the and implies that it has to be all these people, and or is more broad, but that's just me.
Well,
you can.
And I think the may gets at the and or.
Yeah.
The may gives the flexibility. I added school psychologist while you were talking.
Okay.
So I would ask that we wrap up this discussion in the next 1 or 2 minutes so that we have enough time to. And at this point, I don't know how others feel we should move on to, or what we should discuss next on this policy. So. I guess what I was kind of getting at there is that, like Brendan was saying, that we've got this nice invitation of we respect students and students' differences, and we are creating this welcoming place. Do we need to get into the details about the restrooms, locker rooms, and changing facilities at this time for this policy adoption? Do we want to? I actually don't know. Hopefully, members who have been on the committee longer than I have can tell me. Is that ever done where you say we know we can't get all of the details settled now, but here we have our overarching policy? Would it be worthwhile to take out those details but have that welcoming statement?
I thought we had those details. We do have it in here in the draft.
Yeah.
I liked it. I like it the way it is. I think it's still broad enough that it conveys some of the major concerns that might come up, and we can expand on it if there are consistent issues. I like it the way it is, including the statement about bathrooms, which I think is a balance between addressing the issue and not going into too much policy related detail.
Mm-hmm. I like it the way it is too. I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Linda.
No, go ahead. Well, I was just going to ask about next steps. Just looking at the time at 8:45, I just wanted to ask what the next steps would be. And Catherine, go. You have your hand up.
Sorry, does gender nonconforming and transgender, does that encompass like everyone that might be affected by this policy? I just don't want to like limit it. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. Like to a point we do have to limit it, but like are we leaving out people that might not say or like label themselves as transgender? I think nonconforming does that, but I just want to make sure we reach all the students that this could affect.
So I think based on the training that I've been through, this feels like the umbrella phrasing that is being currently used to address all students, sort of all encompassing. But of course, you know, a year down the road, there might be some new phrases that we haven't even thought of yet. So.
Right.
That's where the review, I think, comes in.
And that's consistent with the other policies I received when I asked MASC. There were like 4 or 5, and they had similar language.
So I actually corresponded with someone in our diversity and inclusion office about this recently for a different reason. And here's what she said to me. She said, in the 90s, people identified as transgender. Now, though, it is more considered our gender identity history. Usually the way we have it is gender identity is male, female, and gender fluid, or X. I don't quite understand what she means by or X. Our drivers, this is a person who is gender fluid. So apparently driver's license now have designations as M, F, and X as gender identity. Let's see here. Anyway, I'm just wondering if we want to put gender fluid instead of transgender or both terms. I mean, you're right that, I mean, language is always evolving and it could be something different in a few years, but this is the latest that I'm aware of. I'm flexible.
Well,
I just wanted to bring that up since
I like that. Thank you. I think that's great, and that's what I was thinking too. Is there are people that refuse to identify, right? And if our policy is all like students who identify, if you identify, and if and what if you don't want to define yourself, and I think that it's important that we are able to address that in there. So what I'm thinking, and I feel that there is a rush to get something out there with this, but I definitely think that it needs a little bit more discussion. And the way that it is written right now, I think that I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable yet giving that to the school committee and saying, hey, this is the policy that we want to put out there just for now, right? I don't know if I feel even comfortable with the just for now kind of thing. It's good, but I think it deserves at least a half hour more. So can we pause this and put it on our next agenda?
Yeah, I think that's what I was going to suggest, is that without objection, we can pause here and move on to the non-discrimination on the basis of disability. I think that is the policy title. And thank you, Brendan, for going through all of these documents and everybody for your attention and flexibility through transitions. My kids work on transitions, and transitions are hard. So
yes,
thank you.
Indeed.
And Linda Longboliel, did you want to point us to a particular direction to start?
Well, it's a policy. I think you have the whole list of policies there, don't you?
So our current policy, right?
Yeah. No, 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 no. The MASC. I thought I saw you had the MASC policy.
Yeah, I just
That's what I wanted to bring up, and I thought I saw you had that list right there.
I do. Yeah, I just took it off the screen for a moment, and we are
Okay.
looking at non-discrimination.
I think it's ACE.
ACE. Got it. All right, I'll pull it back up here. Okay. And zoom in a little bit. Just let me know. I think it needs a zoom. Oh, I think
We lost.
Linda, you still there?
Oh, back.
I got knocked out for a moment. I don't know why. Here we are. Yes.
I have to readmit you. Okay, there you go.
So this, I liked this policy because as far as I know, it was pretty consistent with the actual law. And I thought it provided people with a little more guidance than sort of the general statements we have about disability. And since the disability gets complicated because of modifications, reasonable modification, and that sort of thing, I just thought it would be useful.
Stand by.
The way they define these terms is pretty consistent. It's consistent with what I know to be the definition of these terms. But if folks don't feel comfortable, if you feel we need to postpone this to a future date, I'm not going to fall on my sword over it. It's very familiar to me, but I understand that it might not be that familiar to other people, and other people might have questions and concerns.
We don't currently have a policy that is specific to disability. Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, that was my understanding from what we had talked about previously. Is that right, Brendan?
Yes, I believe that is right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I did just put the link to this policy in the chat.
So what has been used in lieu of having a policy? Is it just IEPs that have been used in order to accommodate a student's disability?
Well, this is related to, the Americans with Disabilities Act, which whether we have a policy on it or not, we're obligated to follow, right?
Right.
We do need a policy. The policy is definitely a missing piece. There's also 504, Section 504. In addition to IEPs.
Right.
There's also the child find obligation under special education. And so this is kind of related in some ways to others, but I do like how specific, like you, Linda, it does give us all the definitions we need and then the procedures. So
So my only question about it, when I have read it before, but one of my only questions was about the compliance coordinator. Do we have such a person? It's just, is that you, Brendan?
Yeah.
Do we have? I don't want to create a position we don't have.
Good point.
That was my only question.
Right. This probably falls in the special ed department, but
that makes sense.
Yeah.
That would make sense. Yeah.
I know we do with students, and that falls under special ed. I just didn't know, as a district. So.
But actually, yeah, so that's a good point. So, I mean, human resources, if this, as it applies to adults, human resources would also be involved in this.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking that it was fairly straightforward, but as I think about it, and I think about the perspective of folks who had not seen all this language a million times like I have, I can understand where, maybe it would take more time. I thought it would be a quick thing, but maybe it's not.
Well, I guess I would ask, is anybody looking to sit with this longer, or is it truly as straightforward as just we have a person, we have a compliance coordinator, that this language fits with how the district acts. We wouldn't be requiring something in this one action, requiring new personnel or something like that. If that's the only, is that the only question? Are there other questions so far?
So I guess my only question is, so if thinking of process and trying to anticipate potential pitfalls, if we were to go through the motion to approve the adoption of this and bring it to the full committee, I think that perhaps the committee might ask, did we speak to the coordinator did the coordinator who works in the district, i.e. the SPED coordinator who oversees this who would be the primary overseer of this policy, did she get consulted, and did she review the policy, and was there feedback provided? We have the unique opportunity to have Brendan here when we're talking about harassment and bullying and so on and so forth. I think that this could fundamentally impact the special ed coordinator. And so I feel that I would like to kind of check that off the box by inviting her to review this and provide us feedback, either through her attendance at a meeting or through an email response that she goes through the chair, and then that gets reported to us as a subcommittee for just just to make sure that there's nothing in here that would fundamentally alter or impact that role. That's my only concern.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think we're assuming it's Christine, but we don't actually know. So I guess my question would be to clarify, perhaps through the chair and Daryl, who is our who that person would be, and have them take a look at this and make sure it's, it's fairly, a lot of it's from law. I also note this is from, I think, 2016, if I recall. It's been on the books with MASC for a really long time, which indicates that it's probably pretty solid. They've reviewed all their policies last year, and it wasn't changed. So my guess is that I don't know, but I assume it's longstanding for a reason. But I'd be curious who that person is, I guess. And I mean, we're assuming it's Christine, but I don't know.
You could have it be Christine, but I mean, it's a discrimination policy. It's a non-discrimination policy. It's not an education policy per se. And she's in charge of education. So it could be you, Brendan.
Could be, yeah. I think we need to ask.
There is overlap in a lot of these. Yeah.
The district, who that person would be before we make a policy that would designate that person. But other than that, I think everything else makes sense to me.
Yeah, and I've just connected. I mean, this is our draft, obviously, our working document, but I did connect in our central office admin team to this document, and I'll ask them to review that before our next meeting.
Okay. And actually, I'm noticing a typo or an inaccuracy in the very first paragraph, a minor thing. They said, if you just scroll up, Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1992, it's actually 1990. So let's see. So
And I'm going to share this with everybody again. This is on our calendar invite too. These last two documents I created. So if you lose track of these after we close the
So
session.
Linda, if that 1990 is accurate, then the second page of the document references the law and also says 1992.
yep, 1990.
Okay. I just gotta find that. Where was that? Okay.
Yeah, down at the bottom on the second page where it says legal reference.
Oh, it says 92. Okay, gotcha. That needs to be 90.
Wow. It's funny. They didn't catch that.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, then if we're set on moving this policy through to review, determine who is the compliance coordinator, have that person review it, and have that before us again at the next meeting, then I think what is left on our next meeting is a date.
Yes.
Can I ask a quick question? Well, it may not be quick, but I'll make it quick. About the item that we skipped about the other policies that have language changes. Obviously, it would probably take time to do those. Some of them have been reviewed in the past couple of years. Some of them are much older. And obviously, the sexual harassment one is really complicated and has like 6 instances, so I won't even touch that one. But I guess my concern is that we have a plan for this. I don't know if it involves reaching out to education, perhaps. A lot of them fall under the education policy group, I think, with homelessness and student residency and assignment to classes. I wonder if sending a memo to them, alerting them to this so that when they revise them, they can pay attention to that detail, or might make sense. Or if there's, I just don't want to leave it inconsistent with the other policies that we've been creating. And obviously we can't change them all right now, but I just didn't know in terms of process, if that made the most sense, or to just keep this in the background for whenever we feel we can get to it. But some of them are under other, I just don't know a plan. They're very minor, but if you're one of the students that it impacts and we're supporting our students, I think having his or her in 7 of our policies is problematic.
So are these all within, would normally fall under education subcommittees?
There's here are the policies. There are student residency policy, 6121. It was revised in 2017. There is homelessness policy, which was revised in 2018. There is the assignment of students to classes. That one hasn't been touched since 2007. There is, I may have the numbers too, but there's behavior and discipline. And there is sexual harassment. And then there's one on child abuse and neglect. And then there's recognition of student achievement and scholarships as well. Those are more minor. Those just don't have the phrase gender identity in the discrimination classes that are protected. But it's more, So I think most of them probably do fall under education, or just policies that haven't been revised for a while because they're more process related, like recognition of achievement and scholarships. I think they all would fall under education though.
So then, next steps, would it make sense that we would ask the chair of this subcommittee to bring this to management? Is that how that would be done? To bring that to a management meeting to request that the appropriate subcommittees that cover those policies keep an eye to gender identity within the policies they're reviewing, call out these specific ones.
Yeah, that might be, I just hate to let them linger. I wish we could have done it some nice, neat, easy way, but obviously that's not possible.
Yeah, I think that asking management and the chair of our school committee to almost like create a resolution that that sets the intention, sets the goal that when policies are up for review in the subcommittees, that the terminology be being made to be inclusive.
Yeah.
The language changes are not substantive changes necessarily to the policy themselves. So management should really think about that. Like, how would we set the intention, set the goal of doing that? And would the policy changes need to come to a full committee for voting if they are non-substantive in nature?
They do, because we had Daryl reach out and our legal team said they do, unfortunately. Unfortunately, these are the non-personnel policies. There's a whole section of, I think, 5 or 6 personnel policies as well, but those have not been touched for over like 20 years, some of them. So that is a bigger process than us. But it made me wonder if we actually need a whole policy review as a district, but that's a whole bigger question. But I just wanted to make sure they weren't lost, and I'm happy to send this, on to whoever needs it. But
so can I suggest that for the next meeting we have on our agenda to create a maybe not a formal resolution, but a memo to forward on to our chair of the policies that have been highlighted. And this request that when subcommittees are reviewing their policies, that they keep in mind this inclusive language.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm fine with that. It's the intent. As I said, I wish we could do it easily, but we can't. So.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, that sounds good to me. And if that sounds good to the group, then let's carry on the good work. So then for the next meeting, if we follow our 2-week pattern and are alternating Tuesdays and Thursdays, we would land on April 29th, which is a Thursday.
Yep.
Am I right, or did I miss a week?
Yeah.
That would be normally. I am, just be honest with you, pool testing is hitting that week, and I'm doing that. So, and I'm wondering about the 6th. And I know it's hard because this is, pretty busy for me, and I know there's a sense of urgency here. But I was wondering about the 6th.
So
we have the reorganization meeting won't be until June 28th. So this subcommittee will be as is until then, correct? It'll be the same membership.
Yeah, but we need 2 readings of policies, and if we don't have one on May 5th, then I think we only have one more meeting. Actually, I think we only have May 5th and then the reorganizing meeting.
Right.
We don't have any meetings in between.
Right.
So my concern is if we don't have it read the first time on May 5th, then we're going to lose our window to get anything done.
Yep.
All right.
So I don't know if there's...
I'm good. Don't worry about me. I'll be here.
Well, I don't know if there's time. I mean, Brendan probably doesn't have time, but I don't know if there's time to meet next week instead of the week after so that we could read it on the 26th, or I don't know.
Right. Well, so it is April vacation, but
I forgot that. Sorry.
Thursday the 22nd, and Krista knows facilities is meeting the 21st. So
I was just working backwards. I'm sorry.
I don't know if it should be done, but it could on the 22nd. I also wonder if we want to switch to, if we want to do Tuesday, May 4th. Is there an annual town meeting on that? On the 4th?
No, there's not. The first is Holden on the 10th.
Okay.
I believe.
Holden's on the 10th is the same day as the election. That's interesting. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, it's not the 10th. I'm sorry. It's the 17th. Never mind.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Sorry.
That's okay. I'm a little preoccupied with the election since I'm up, so
Yes. Sorry, my brain
Understandable.
isn't working.
that's okay.
Yeah.
That may also be why I'm a little anxious about some of this stuff because
Yeah.
who knows?
So our next school meetings are the 26th and May 5th, and that's all we have right now scheduled for committee meetings. So before the
So I guess
28th.
I would ask if the 22nd, I also, without, I don't, what do you think, Brendan? About
Next week,
if we did the 22nd and the group, I mean,
I definitely cannot.
Oh, business and finance is meeting the 22nd.
Yeah.
At 7.
You can't miss it, Malia, just once.
Probably.
I know you're the vice chair.
I'm just pointing out that it's assuming Ken is there, yes, I can do that. I was just pointing
But
out.
Brendan, you
this
cannot
meeting.
make the 22nd, correct?
That's
Oh,
it.
then never mind. Darn
April
it.
vacation. I'm surprised that the finance committee is meeting over April vacation.
It's
I
actually
think we
not-
have some
that's not
things we
why I'm
have to
missing it, but yeah.
approve.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
so can I propose if we do, because we have everybody here except for Asma on a Tuesday night. Can we do Tuesdays again? Could we do May 4th?
I think May
Yeah.
4th should work for me.
I
Is that
may or
okay, Melissa? I
may-
think you were the one who had trouble with Tuesdays.
Tuesdays are tough. So if my husband has class, so if he's out early like today, I'm good. But if he's not, then I could run late or not show up. It depends on the night.
Do
You guys
Yeah.
can go ahead and do it, and I'll try to log on, camera or not.
Just
So,
Take care of children. I can do double duty.
so I just want to throw this in there. Hopefully this will work, but the 5th is a special meeting with a special purpose, so we should probably check with Mike and make sure he's willing to put something else on the agenda.
Mhm,
It's not a normal meeting.
mhm.
So complicated.
It is.
26 is our last regular
Well,
meeting, and the 5th
so
is
I
not
think
normal
then
meeting.
what we're at, because whether we do the 29th or the 4th, we would have the same issue with May 5th and
Mhm.
the potential problem with the agenda. So we can ask Mike about that no matter what. So I
Right.
think let's land on the 4th, if that works for you, Brendan,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
then we'll have something on the books.
That works good.
Is that okay?
At the risk of raising another complication, do we need to have legal review everything before we?
Yep.
So, as much as I, would like to get this all done before the next meeting, I really, and as much as I am preoccupied with the election, it just doesn't seem realistic. I think maybe let me make sure I'm on track. Did we finish 6347? No.
The
Okay.
harassment? No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. Okay. It just doesn't seem. I think it's gonna be. I don't think it's realistic for us to finish this before May 5th. Unfortunately.
So I have to apologize that I have to sneak out because I have a phone call I have to do by 9:30. I just found out, so I have to run and go make the phone call. I thought I had till 10 and they just changed their schedule. So I trust whatever you all figure out. I'm pretty flexible. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's all right. It's only 45 minutes past our original ending time, so.
All right, so May 4th.
I think May 4th is what we're gonna have to work with.
Okay. Okay.
I think you're right, Linda, that there's a lot of work that needed to be done here, and it just takes
Mhm.
time. I don't know. That's
Yeah.
I agree.
I think we've been putting in the work.
We
Been
have.
sitting back.
Right.
Okay, so then with that, so then what I have for the next meeting is the continuing the 6437, the continuing the gender identity policy to continue working on the particular focus on the last half of the sample policy, and then to review the non-discrimination on the basis of disability policy after it's gone through central office and worked over with by the compliance coordinator, right? So that's on the agenda. And then also to bring up a memo or resolution of some kind for the inclusive pronouns on other policies. And then with that, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All right. So Linda,
Aye. Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Krista,
Yes.
Melissa,
Yes.
and the vice chair says yes too. So we are adjourned. Thank you very much.